All righty. Welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving online information entrepreneurs throughout the US and the world. I am so excited to welcome you to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. Today, we are connecting with Nikki Nash. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here with you.
Oh, I'm super excited about this conversation. Even in just the short chat we've had before going live, I think we're going to be hitting on some very relevant topics for people. So, for those of you that don't know Nikki, Nikki Nash is a podcast host, woohoo, Hay House author, and creator of Market Your Genius, a training and development brand on a mission to equip entrepreneurs with the tools and resources they need to share and profit from their message. So today, and Nikki's on the other coast. We were just chatting. She's in New Jersey. I'm in Seattle. Nikki used to live in Portland. So we share a little, mini Pacific Northwest connection. Of course, we had to chat about the weather for a second as it begins to rain here again in Seattle. Nikki's very glad, I'm sure, to be back on the other coast, where that actually comes to an end at some point. Nikki, I would love to hear about your journey into entrepreneurship, right? It looks a little different for everyone, but there are often some common themes. Do you want to share with us where and how you got started?
Yeah. So, like a lot of folks, I've had many baby businesses or ideas throughout my life, starting with selling things as a kid and all of that. But I would say that probably around 2016 is when it was really earlier than that. So maybe like 2014 is when I was like, oh, let me actually try to monetize my area of expertise. And so what essentially happened at the time is about a year earlier, I had found out that my aunt was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I was actually in Seattle when I found out, which is crazy. It was like
that's an unfortunate
well, yeah,
connection to Seattle. Boo.
I mean, it was a great trip, but my mom had called me and I could tell something was off, and that's how my maternal grandmother had passed away. And so we did genetic testing. My aunt tested positive for the gene, the BRCA2 gene. My mom tested positive. So then ultimately my sister and I had to get positive. Get tested. And long story short, the day that I was getting tested was the day that Angelina Jolie wrote her article called My Medical Choice about her family having the BRCA1 gene mutation, which puts her at high risk for breast cancer and then ultimately ovarian cancer. And it was it was just one of those moments where I realized I wasn't alone, and I realized the power of sharing one story. And I was working on the West Coast, loved my job, loved my team, but was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, right? Like I've always loved writing. I always loved storytelling. I worked with a lot of influencers in my job, like YouTubers, things like that. This was back in like 2011 is when I kind of started working with influencers. And I was just like, you know what, maybe I want to do my own thing one day. And after my aunt was sick, I decided I wanted to move back east. And so fear got in the way. So anybody who's like had the idea to start a business and then didn't really fully go all in, I was right there with you. So like I quit my full-time, like 6-figure paying job to start this business and then didn't go all in the business. Right. So I took a job as head of marketing at a tech startup. And then I had a side hustle where I would teach entrepreneurs marketing and how to get leads and how to, get more dream clients and things along those lines. And ultimately I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I don't want to do this for someone else. And so I left my head of marketing role and started my own business. And so it's evolved a bit over time. slightly, like you tweak a little things, you start working with folks, you realize who you really like working with, and then you shift your focus or messaging a little bit. But from the beginning till today, at the end of the day, I'm like the go-to person for folks with service-based businesses, particularly expertpreneurs, helping them package their expertise into services, and then getting a consistent flow of dream clients. And yeah, and I was sharing with you, Heather, right before we hit record, that fairly recently I've merged my genius with my business besties genius, and we're focused on helping folks that have group programs basically double to triple, if not more, their revenue from that group program through like my sales and marketing expertise and her delivery and curriculum and client retention expertise. So that's what I'm up to, and kind of how I got started and how it's going today.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. Well, I'm always curious, like at what point in the path somebody recognizes like, oh yeah, I need to be doing this for myself and in my own way versus for somebody else or as part of somebody else's big team, right? What do you love about the expert-based businesses?
So I think my favorite thing about expert-based businesses is really being able to leverage everything about you, right? Like every experience that you've had, even if it's not directly tied to what you're teaching or doing, is connected, right? Like I fairly recently got into real estate investing, and before I dove in, I was reading all of these books, and I saw, oh my gosh, like they're teaching, like, this is exactly how I teach marketing, but they're talking about something different, right? And it's just really fun to realize that when you are an expert in something and you're able to share that with the world, and then you continuously learn from other experts, you can see similarities and you can see the transferability. I was an English major, and I'm unclear on if I'm making up
I'm
words.
pretty sure that's a
I was
word.
like, that's a word, but it sounded funny as I was saying it. I'm like, what? But the ability to transfer your skills into different markets and industries. And so I think it's nice to be rewarded and monetize your stories, your expertise, your learnings and knowledge, and to kind of really truly see that everything you've been through and everything you've learned has the ability to expand your life and your well-being in different ways.
Well, and your work in your business, right? I think more and more people are realizing, even as I look at like the legal world, like there is a way to holistically approach your practice that not only brings your skills, your background, your various strengths into your work, but looks at, your client work in a much different way. And I think, at least from what I can tell, like the old school expert-based businesses looked a very certain way. And for the most part, I think that landscape is really changing. There's a lot of ways that experts can show up and do the work that they're doing and be creative in how they approach and execute their work. What, for many of these folks, right? We were chatting briefly about the reality that a lot of these people are building personal brands. Like, their business does become a personal brand. What are some of the unique obstacles that these types of businesses face?
Oh, I would say the biggest one is having, how do I want to put this? Like having your business and your brand so tied to your personal brand that it's hard to remove yourself from it, right? Like one of the things that I really realized over the course of building this business is that I want to build something that has legacy, something that can live beyond me. And so it's had me contemplate like, okay, I'm building my personal brand. And in a certain extent, my personal brand is a business, but how do I build a business that still has that ability to run when I'm long and gone? And that's not what everybody wants, right? Like some people want to build it's just my brand business, and I'm going to work it until I'm done working it, and then I'm going to retire, right? Like, and that's okay. And some people want to exit from this business and build equity in it and like leave it. And other folks want to like build something that just like lives on for like decades after they're gone. And I think one of the biggest challenges is, one, figuring out what you want, and two, then figuring out how to leverage your personal brand to accomplish that.
I love the way you said that, because my next question was going to be, can people do both, right? Can they build a business that has leverage, but also utilize a personal brand along the way? Or
Yeah,
are
I
those
mean,
things mutually exclusive in your opinion?
no, I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I think that there has to be a lot of intention around it, right? So I am actually, when my business started, it was like, I'm Nikki Nash. This is like almost the Nikki Nash show. Like, here's my
It's
genius.
a
I'm
great
sharing it with
show, by the
you.
way, folks. Yeah.
Thank you. And I was like, ta-da, right? And then as I was building my business and really thought about it, I'm like, you know what? That's not actually what I want. So how do I sit down and go, okay, what do I stand for? What are the things that I'm interested in? What is it that I want to bring to the world and share with the world? And how do I continue to build up my personal brand and presence, but I'm building up my personal brand as CEO of this company or of this brand or of this entity that can live on without me, right? And so there are still things that are like coming from me, right? Like I wrote a book, I have a podcast, I plan on writing more books. I love, creating content. So all of that comes from me, but I do it from this the standpoint of, okay, like here's what I stand for, what my interests are, what you're learning from me. But guess what? There's a methodology behind the madness, right? There's a framework, and this framework is teachable. This framework can be like, people can be certified in this framework. And even though it came from me initially, it is not me alone, right? And so if you don't get me, it doesn't mean that like you will not have an amazing experience or that you will not be able to succeed. And I think that's the biggest thing from a marketing perspective, from a messaging perspective, and from a delivery perspective, that's important. Because if you're building a personal brand and you know that ultimately you want to remove yourself out of the implementation or delivery, you have to communicate from the beginning that it's your methodology that's the magic, right? And then you have to look at, okay, what are the core values and the reasons that people are into me, and how do I make sure as I hire team and I build people that those values
Live on.
are shared and live on, right? And so I think those are some of the important things, because there are other bubbly people out there. There are other witty people out there. There are other sarcastic people out there, right? And I happen to be a combination of all of those things. And but the way in which I speak and the way in which I present myself, and people are going to love you or hate you, and it's like, great. But independent of loving me or hating me, here's a methodology. And do you like the methodology? Do you like what I'm teaching? Do you love this? And if you can love this, then it doesn't matter if it's coming from directly me that's teaching it to you, right? Like,
I love that so much. Yeah, I was just actually having this conversation with somebody the other day who has built up, I mean, he's got like a podcast that I think has, I can't remember honestly if it's like 18 million or like 180 million downloads. It's insane. It's like worldwide. He's done it for years and years, like literally thousands of episodes. And he's at a stage where he is actually making this exact transition of like, how I built up this massive personal brand. How do I now transition into really the CEO status of like, where's my company headed next, right? And it's such an important conversation. And I love that you are thinking about this now and talking about it now, because I do think that the earlier we start wrapping our minds around this and thinking about it in the context of how does this apply to my business, we're just going to build better businesses, right? We're going to build them more thoughtfully and more intentionally. And so I really love that piece of your message. I want to get into the methodology, but first I want to go to the question. What do you stand for?
Ooh, okay. This is a great question. And I stand for a couple of things. One thing that I stand for, and I think I am going to give you a combination of things I stand for and some of my beliefs and things that I like. So a big reason as to why I'm attached to building my business and brand and things like that is I believe in pretty much like obliterating the gender and racial gap that exists within entrepreneurs, and it exists outside of entrepreneurship, but I am in the entrepreneurship land. And so I want that gone, right? Like, I don't want, statistically, because I'm a Black female, that how much money I'm going to make in my business statistically, right, is significantly smaller than almost every other race and gender combination out there. Like, you know what I mean? So and same, women tend to make less than men, minorities tend to make less than non-minorities. It's just like general statistics that I'm just like, F that. Like, everybody has knowledge, wisdom, magic. And if you can understand how to play the game of entrepreneurship and brand building and wealth generating, then you can win, right? And not everybody knows the rules of the game. So I'm a stand for like that level of transparency, that level of like everybody rises together, and that level of like, let's level the playing field. So that's a big piece for me. The other big piece of something that I stand for is I really believe in creating generational wealth. And it's something that once I got clear on that was something that was important to me and was able to put words behind it, it changed the way that I think about business and the way I think about my business, right? I went from playing the game of like, I want to build the biggest brand, I want to have the biggest revenue. And I'm like, screw that. Like, yeah, that's cool. That's great. I'm not opposed to it, but I want to make my business as profitable as possible. And I want to be able to leverage that profit to do other things, right? Like create wealth through real estate, create wealth through real estate investments that are typically only available to like ultra high or high net worth individuals, right? And so those things are important to me. And I don't only want to do them, but I want to figure out the game and then share the game with other people, right? So I'm like, when I think about, like what's next, I already know what I'm learning now. I want to be teaching in like 10 or 15 years from now, if not sooner, to folks, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, but I need the brand and businesses I'm building now to be able to run without me, so that I can then build the other thing so that ultimately that can run without me. So it's like I have no shortage of business ideas.
Right. Things to do between now
Yeah.
and then. Yeah. Just a little tiny short list.
Sure.
Yeah. No, and this is so relevant, and this conversation becomes, I think, just increasingly relevant, right? You look at what COVID has done to these gaps. I was reading an article just the other day here in Seattle about the gap between racial equity when it comes to investing in real estate here in Seattle, and that gap has widened. The gap has gotten even bigger throughout COVID. The numbers of Black people that have been able to buy and hold real estate, like, is even, and it's so hard. I mean, from so many different perspectives. I think people have really been in the struggle. Moms have been in the struggle, right? I mean, COVID, I'm one of them, right? And I can talk all day to like the challenges of trying to keep a business alive and trying to keep two small children in school. Before we went live, I told you like my daughter's home again today, and you'd think we'd moved beyond that point of COVID when kids were just home chronically. And it's like, no, we still feel like we are in it, because you can't even take a kid with sniffles right now into public schools, So, but the weight, and I belong to circles of women who are in the entrepreneurship world, the weight consistently falls on women's shoulders repeatedly to like hold the seams together, right? In all of the different ways. And so it's, these issues, unfortunately, we've not made strides the last few years. They've actually significantly worsened. And so this conversation is so important from a future thinking perspective. And I love that you're already asking yourself, how can I do this so that I can teach others the rules of the game, right? And I'd love to know, when you shifted from business building to profitability, what changed within your own business? Like, I'd love to hear some of the shifts that you made, like boots on the ground, right?
Yeah. So a number of things changed. I think I am naturally a blissfully optimistic person, right? So I'm the person that's like, you know what? I have a good feeling about this investment. Like, I have a good feeling about this program, a good feeling about this coach. I'm going to get something out of it. Let me just I'll do it. And, we'll just see what happens. Right. And and I did that, I wrote about it in my book. Like, I made great revenue my first year, And I was like investing in, I was in a group program. I had a private coach. I that was probably like teaching things that I didn't need to be learning or being at right then. I was like traveling all over the place. I was in France, and I was in Norway, and I was in, Ireland, and like, or
You were
Scotland.
living your best life.
I was living my best life, which was great. But at the end of living my best life, I was like, at the end of the year, I was burnt out and had like no money in my bank account. And I was like tired of constantly having to go, well, I need to get more clients and make more money so that I can like fund my next year of gallivanting or whatever. And when I sat down and I was like, all right, I am right now playing a short-term game. I was playing how can I make the most money right now so I can do this thing, and hopefully it'll like keep the momentum going, and I'll just be like a 7-figure business owner. Hooray. And I was thinking like, all right, this isn't really working for me. Like, I'm not enjoying this. And as I started thinking about like, oh, I want to create wealth and create, a legacy, that can't happen overnight. That's a long-term goal, right? I mean, like, I'm sure it could. I mean, like, I could win a bajillion dollars,
Mega millions.
mega million, or like I'd probably need billions of dollars for this to really happen overnight because of taxes and crap. But like, like it's not like I'm winning the lottery or having some sort of windfall, or there's like great distant relative that I didn't know about and decided to only let me inherit and they were wealthy. Like, that stuff's not happening. So this has to be a long-term game. And if it's a long-term game, then okay, I need to actually do the math. And so I did the math in terms of how much I wanted to make. I have this goal. I believe in sharing your goals with people, whether you hit it or not, just because you're like, I'm putting it out in the universe. But I want to be an ultra high net worth individual, which means I need to have a net profit, oh my gosh, why can't I think of that word that means like your wealth?
Oh, not net revenue, because that's just your earnings. No,
it's just literally like your
net value,
assets minus liabilities. Wow, I am blanking. I could do it on a balance sheet or income statement, but I can't think, not balance sheet, but an income statement. Net worth.
Yeah.
I knew it was a net something with a W. Your net worth.
You know what? You're talking to somebody who continually struggles over here with tired mom brain. And lately, I don't know if it's thyroid, adrenal, something else. I'm not even joking. I was on a phone call with my sister, and like every other word, I was like, what is that word? Yeah, you don't need to apologize. I have so much flexibility for people losing words because I've done it so often.
Yeah, I'm like, I see part of it. I'm like, it's a net and then a W. I'm like, wealth, worth, profit. What is it? So net worth to be an ultra high net worth individual. That's hilarious. It's in the title. And I was like, what's the word? Your net worth needs to be $30 million and above, right? So that means like you have your assets minus your liabilities is $30 million plus, right? And 30 million for folks is like the low end of the ultra high net worth.
Right.
Folks. But I was like, I want, and it's just like, because I want to. It's like fun for me to go after this. I may hit it, I may not hit it, but I want to be able to create like trusts for my family. I mean, I want my kids and their kids and their kids to work hard, play like, but be able to learn, do whatever the heck they want, make money, but then know that like they're adding to this pot of money that they could then too also donate, give away,
have
be
impact
able to
with.
be in the rooms where decisions are being made and people pay attention to you, right? Like that's some of the possibilities that I see with this. So I did the math and I'm like, all right, for me to have $30 million of a net worth, what the heck do I need to acquire from a real estate perspective, from a general like investment portfolio perspective, which means how much do I need to make in my business? And I was like, yo, Nick, you can't be willy-nilly saying, all right, I'll just try your $20,000 program and see what happens. Like, no, I have a budget and I have a list of criteria, and I'm going to make decisions all through the lens of, is this going to help me or serve my ultimate goal? And if it doesn't serve my ultimate goal, then it's a heck no. If I'm kind of on the fence, it's in the, all right, you got, it's in the consideration list. And
maybe
if it's
later.
heck, yeah. Right. Yeah. Like, so that's probably the biggest thing, is that having that clear vision, but then also doing the math to understand what needs to happen for it to be a possibility.
Right. Well,
I was
ding,
like,
ding, ding.
oh,
You said it. You
okay.
said the hard part, I think, for a lot of people right there, doing the math, right?
Yeah.
Actually sitting down and looking at the numbers. I think that is hard for a lot of people. And I've had this conversation with other folks who love to talk about money and why that is. Like we are kind of negatively influenced by numbers from a young age, right? Whether it's math class, stepping on the scale, whatever it is. So many of us have negative connotations with numbers. And and yet, right, how many people right now are waking up to the fact that if they're going to move into retirement, their quality of life is going to drastically change,
Yeah.
right? It's a brutal wake up.
It is. And I like math. And I'm like, keep it simple. I just
Mhm.
did like very conservatively. I'm like, all right, if I want to have this much money, and let's pretend I'm doing it all through real estate, and I'm not, but let's pretend I
Mhm.
was. This is how I did the math. I'm like, let's assume the average value of a piece of property that I'm going to have is this amount. Let's just divide the numbers. How many properties do I need to have? Okay. How many properties would I need to acquire a year in order to do this in a specific time frame? Okay. How much money would I need either for a down payment, or there are ways to buy homes with 0% down.
Mhm.
That's a whole nother story. But I was like, let's just say like even with for like backup money for cushion for reinvesting or remodeling or things like that. I did all that
Mhm.
math and then I was like, all right, well, now I know what I need to do this year. And if it's not in alignment with that, heck no. Like I'm
Mm.
not doing it.
Well, and I love that reframe of looking at every decision that you make, whether it's in service to that larger end goal, right? And I think a lot of people where they get strung up is figuring out, is this the right next step? Maybe it is a step somewhere on their path, but is it the right next one, right? Can
Yeah.
you speak to that? Because I think a lot of people in this path of building things generally do some stuff out of order.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there you have to honor the stage that you're in, right? Like I want to be a ultra high net worth individual. I am not doing the exact things that somebody at that stage is doing right now because I'm like trying to get there, right? Like before you can be wealthy, you have to make money, like you have to like have wealth or riches, right? And before you can do that, you have to figure out how the heck to make money or you need to have some money, right? So like
Mhm.
my job right now in business is like my goal is to figure out how I can make my businesses as profitable as possible, right?
Mhm.
And to build them in such a way that I could exit from them and still make money from them, right? In a couple of ways. The same way I look at real estate, which is why I'm like, oh, it's all connected, right? Like how do I have a um cash flow coming to me from the opportunity and the investment, as well as have it appreciate in wealth so that when I exit it, there's like it's worth something, right? It's worth a
Yeah.
lot. Same way as I look at real estate properties is the way that I look at businesses and vice versa, right?
Oh, well, it's so important and people can often relate to this like in the concept of relationships, right? When you start a relationship, you're often not looking at like where does this end?
Yeah.
But it's exactly what you should be doing with every business, every potential business partnership, every investment in real estate, right? What am I doing and where does this end? What is the exit strategy? And people get that. And yet I still think it's a hard thing for a lot of people to do at the very beginning.
Absolutely. And to your point, understand, okay, where am I on this journey, right? Like, okay, we're on our first date. I don't need to be
Mhm.
worried about my wedding dress right now. We're literally out to dinner. I'm just trying to figure out right now if I even like this person,
Mhm.
right? Like, do we have similar values? Do I even like speaking to you? So, like, honor where you are, right? Like, if you are just starting your business, figure out what sells, right? If you've been in business a while, figure out how to, sell more of what you're selling without it requiring extra effort, right? Like, how can you be more
Mhm.
efficient and effective? Then it's like, all right, maybe you get to a point where you're like, all right, how do I systemize things so that I can ultimately outsource this or automate it or something along those lines? And this goes across like marketing, sales, delivery, like all of those areas. And then it's like, okay, great. I'm going to bring on a person. How do I bring on a person and still make sure that, now that I have an increase in expenses, I'm still making sure that I'm profitable, right? Like what
Mhm.
needs to happen? And so I think it's just figuring out where you are and honoring that and being okay with that. And I think the biggest challenge that I see people face, and they don't even realize it, but I speak to so many coaches and consultants, and I'm like, or business owners, and I'm like, you are talking to me about stuff that is like 10 steps down the line. I was like, don't worry about it. Don't talk about it. I get it. I like to know like big picture where I'm going and understand everything. But then I also have to go back and be like, okay, but I'm here, right? Like your GPS doesn't go in 25 minutes, right? Like make this turn. No, it's like you have a turn coming up in a few mile, like less than a mile, right? So that's the way that you want to think about your next step, is like, what's coming up next? What do I need to focus on right now? I know ultimately what my destination is, but I don't need to be worried about the step that's 25 minutes or miles away. Right.
Yeah, no, it's so true. That keeping your perspective in the right, like looking at it through the right lens is just so important. Speaking to the folks that have established a business, right? They've got proof of concept, they're midway building this business. Let's shift gears a little bit to speaking about some of the nuts and bolts of what you do, right? Who you work with, what you're helping them focus on, right? I know before we went live, we were talking a little bit about the challenges of building an audience and then audience retention and client retention once you've built that, right? So I think those are really important things for a lot of people that are midway through that path.
Absolutely. And I think, just starting with audience, one of the biggest things that a lot of people believe that they need is more leads. Now, yes, having a consistent flow of leads is important for your business. But where I see a lot of people go wrong is that I had a call with a client yesterday, and we were talking through, she's doing a conversion event to fill a program. And she was like, all right, this is how many people I got with my last conversion event. This is how many people came. This is how many people purchased. So if I want this many more sales, I need to multiply how many people register by this amount. And I'm like, that's one of a couple of options, right? I'm like, you could get more leads. You could have more of your leads show up to the event, right? Like, or more signups, right? You can get more people who sign up, show up.
Like higher conversion. Yep.
Right. You can also have more of the people that show up purchase, right? And I'm a big believer of starting with maximizing and increasing your conversion percentage before you start filling your funnel with more people. And the reason for this is that if you keep filling it with more people, it's like taking a bucket that has holes in it, and you're just like, I need more water, so I'm just going to keep flooding in more and more water. And it's like, plug up some of the damn holes. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's such a good analogy.
Hole, you would have more water.
Right. Well, and it relays, I think, so well into the fact that so many people end up focusing on like, where did their new leads come from? They stop taking care of the ones that they have, and they stop taking care of the people that are already in their system that have other needs, have other supports that they would willingly show up for. Right. And there's such a disconnect. I remember reading some statistic one time about 97% of businesses don't have a consistent follow-up built in to take care of the people they've already got.
Yeah. And if people looked at it this way, because a lot of folks at certain levels are doing things organically. And so they may not be paying attention to the time investment that it took them to acquire folks organically. But if you put money behind that time, and if you are running ads or doing paid promotions or things like that, if you look at the dollar sign, one of the things that is important for businesses, and again, if you're not here yet, don't worry about calculating these numbers, but just understand what I'm saying conceptually, is that there is a value to acquiring customers, right? It's called your cost of acquisition, your customer acquisition cost, CAC for short, right? CAC. But it's like, there's a cost to acquiring customers. And then there's also something called lifetime value, which is how long a customer stays with you. And if you can increase the amount of time that a customer stays with you, it will ultimately reduce, or relatively, you'll spend less money needing to acquire new customers, the more the customers you already have spend with you.
That's right. Sell more to the people you already have, right?
Exactly. Because it takes so much money, time, and effort to get someone to buy from you that first time. And that dramatically reduces each time that same person will buy from you, especially if they've had a good positive experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, I have folks. How do I keep these folks? How do I keep these folks happy? How do I build a relationship with these folks? And often that's where I have folks start. Like they're always like,
Yeah.
Nikki, I need more leads. I want more leads. And I'm like, let's pretend that you have access. And it's not even a pretending, it's true. It's like you have access to more than enough people to fill your program.
Right.
All right.
Let's start there.
Let's start there. Let's perfect and master the follow-up process, because once you have that down and you understand how much follow-up it takes, what you need to say to like what your messaging is, why people are buying from you again and again and again, then you can leverage that in your marketing, and you can make your marketing more effective and efficient, and you have clarity around the right leads for you. And then you're attracting those right leads better and more effectively. And then bam, you're like, huh, I'm making way more money doing less because I've perfected and tweaked everything before. Perfection is a myth, but like
you plugged the holes in that bucket.
You plugged the holes. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Plug those holes.
Where do you see your clients in these types of businesses falling down the most when it comes to retention? What is it that you see like immediately that many of them are doing wrong?
So I think the first thing is not having a plan for retention, right?
Yeah.
Like I think so often people think, okay, when their package is over, whether they're in a group program or one-on-one, when it's coming to an end, that's when I will start worrying about retention. And most people decide whether or not they're going to buy from you again within the first like 30, 60, 90 days of working with you. Right. So if you have a year-long program, it's not month 10 or 11 that you should be worrying about retention. It's month 1, 2, and 3 that you need to be worrying about retention. And if your programs are shorter, like, it just kind of like shrinks. Like right after someone buys is when you have to pay attention to this the whole time, right?
Yeah.
But you really want to make sure that, one, they're having a positive experience, two, that the experience that they're having is congruent with the marketing that you just provided them with. Because one of the biggest reasons people are like, I'm out, is because they feel bamboozled. It's because you did all this marketing, all this sales. You were like, I'm amazing. Look at me, the face of my business. Great. And then they join the program and they never see from you again, hear from you again. Like what you're teaching is not what you promised. And they're like pissed off. Right. And so happens all the time.
And it's such a shame. So it's so like you're speaking my language. When I talk to people, there's a series of buckets that I teach my clients about when it comes to their legal risk as well as their legal solutions. One of them, which is the dispute resolution bucket, right? People love this bucket. I also call it the communication strategy bucket, but like think of your business as a series of touch points. The enrollment process is just one of many, many, many touch points, and people focus on enrollment, right? And that's partly where I can come in with legal support documents, client service agreements, like terms and conditions for online, sales or whatever, all the things. But when I'm looking at a client's business, we're going way back to make sure, right? The whole point of decreasing, I call it, minimizing client disputes and decreasing confusion, right? Is to go back to the beginning of time, marketing, right? The touch points with your website, your whatever you're doing online, and making sure you're properly setting client expectations so that you don't create a pissed off person down the line where you really screwed it up because you oversold or overcommitted, right? Having them analyze every step along the way. Are they in the right conversation? Are they saying the same things? Otherwise, yeah, this is often how people end up with legal problems on their hands.
Yeah. Like I would rather you create like a minimal viable product, like under promise and over deliver. Because like the best thing you can do is deliver someone an even better experience than what they were expecting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. So that's probably the biggest thing when it comes to retention. And there are there are specific things that you can do, but I would say like the where you lose people kind of right off the bat is when it's like, hey, I am not getting what I signed up for, and I no longer am excited because it's like people have buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
People don't trust you because they've bought your program. I think that's one of the biggest myths. People are like, no, like, and trust you, and they'll buy from you. I hate that phrase for so many reasons. Just because I bought your program doesn't mean I trust you. It just means that I believed enough in the possibility of your program working to pay money for
Right.
it.
To solve my
Right?
pain. Yeah.
Exactly. But I
Yeah.
don't necessarily trust you until like, 3 months in, a year in, who knows how long it takes people.
Yeah. Well, and even if I did trust you for a hot minute, if you turn
Yeah,
around and do this thing, right, that evaporates also instantaneously.
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's such an important piece. I hope people like really took a lot of notes right there. So oh my gosh, I feel like there's so much that we could dig into here. I think this retention thing is huge. Talk to us just for a minute or two about what else you see people struggling with kind of in this phase, and ways that you, and now it sounds like you and your business partner come in and support folks.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've been hearing a lot lately is I have like the wrong people in my program.
Oh, that's
Hear it all the
painful.
time.
Yep.
Painful. Wrong
Yep.
people in my program, or it's like a mix, right? Like I have some of the right people, some of the wrong people, and it's creating a like disjointed experience for folks, right?
Mhm. Yes, I end up helping those people kick people out of their programs. I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yes.
It's such a thing. And I think part of the problem is at its core, it's really a problem with messaging and boundaries, right? Like those are
Mhm.
probably the two biggest things. Your messaging is off if you're attracting the wrong people, right? And your boundaries, you're not necessarily setting the right boundaries. And I'll speak to folks and they'll be like, but what if this person just comes in, even though they're slightly off? No, like once you say yes to that person, then you're opening the ability or the floodgates almost for other people who are slightly off to join. And then next
Yeah.
thing you know, you have a bunch of slightly off people and only a couple that really feel ideal. And I would say that like the other piece of that outside of messaging and boundaries is that it's a mindset thing. Like
Mhm.
I will talk to folks, we will come up with clear messaging, we will come up with boundaries, I will leave them and they'll come back and say, but I don't have these people in my audience. And I'm like, how the heck do you know you've never messaged to them? Maybe the reason why they're not buying from you or paying attention is because they do not feel like you're speaking to them. Right.
Yes, right.
And
Going back to all those touch points, right? Like tracking the whole map. Where did you start having the conversation? Who are you having it with? Is it the right language for them? Yes.
yeah, I
Yeah.
have business clients, friends who have literally shifted their messaging and had folks that had been following them forever suddenly go, wow, I feel like you're speaking to me and now I'm ready to buy. And it's not like they
Mhm.
got new leads. They had the same people. Those people were just quiet because you weren't speaking to them. And so that's probably like one of the, if I have heard that a million times, I would probably not even be lying because I hear that one all the time. Like, I don't have the right audience. I'm not, the people I want aren't signing up. I have the
Oh,
wrong people. And it's like, we need to work on your messaging. We need to work on your mindset. We need to work on your boundaries. And like
oh.
those three things will super make a huge difference.
Right.
A big difference.
Totally. I know. Write her down or again. Messaging, mindset, boundaries. And I work a lot on the boundaries side because when people screw that up, things go wrong in their business.
Yep.
Um, no, to your point though, about getting the messaging right, I had a great conversation with a friend named Peter, who's just an episode published a few episodes ago. But he also lives in the messaging world. And he said the thing that's fascinating is people will get hyper focused on like split testing, blah, blah, blah. Why does this landing page do so well and this one does not? And he said people are focused on the words, even when the message is entirely wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, oh, I wish people understood the truth of that statement. Like, it's not about the words, you guys. It's about, did you choose the right message to begin with?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And that goes down to like, how well do you truly know your audience? And so often people are
Mhm.
like, I know them. I was like, when's the last time you spoke to someone in your target audience?
Mhm.
Truthfully, and ask them like, what was going on in their mind? What were they struggling with? Now that like there's inflation and things happening with the economy, like
Mhm.
have your thoughts changed? Have your fears changed? Have things changed? People like, it's not a one and done. I come up with my message, I do my market research. That's like a you're doing this all the time sort of a thing.
Right. Absolutely. Ah, so good. For folks that are listening, where do you like for people to connect with you online, Nikki?
Ooh, okay. So if you have questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, emotions, hit me up on Instagram. I'm
If
at
you don't
Nikki
have
Nash
any of those, you're
Official.
a robot and just
Yeah.
go away.
Don't reach out to me if you have none of those things. But if you have any of those things, especially in relation to what we've talked about today,
Mm,
you can connect with me on Instagram. I'm at Nikki Nash Official. And yeah, that would probably be the first thing. And if you are someone who has an existing group program or just like has the desire to build a group program and you're like, how the heck do I fill this with people? You can go to fillyourgroupprogram.com, and I have a really kick butt series of content on there that will help you fill your group program. And it's
oh,
really just fill any program, but it's designed for folks with group.
right. No, I love that. You can find those links, anything else that you want to share. I feel like we need to put a plug in for your podcast as well, but you'll find all of that at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Go look for Nikki's episode. Nikki, talk to us for 1 minute about your podcast.
Yes. So podcast is the same name of my book. It's called Market Your Genius. And I wrote it for the expertpreneur who's like, I am in that phase where I am like trying to make more money and higher profits. And so that's really what we focus on, with the goal of you being able to then leverage that profit for other things. And that's the Market Your Genius podcast. How do you take
I
your
love
knowledge,
it.
experiences, and expertise and profit from it?
Yeah. So hop over there, check out Nikki on her podcast. I think it sounds amazing. Nikki, it's been so fun to connect with you and hear about your story. And I just love your enthusiasm for what you do. I really look forward to being connected. What final thoughts do you have for people today?
I guess the last thing I would say is like wherever you are right now is perfect, right? Like everybody started at zero. Everybody has a different path to their ultimate destination. I have made more mistakes than I can count. I have beat myself up over mistakes. I have felt like celebrated wins, right? Like it's a journey. And just try to remember that wherever you are is perfect. You're gonna get lessons and magic from it, and just like celebrate the journey, enjoy the journey.
So important, especially right now as people are trying to reconnect with like what enjoying the journey looks like. I feel like a lot of people are in that phase. Nikki, so great to have you here. Thank you again for coming and visiting us today.
Oh my goodness, Heather, thank you so much for having me.